Thank you, Dr. Vijay, Digvijay, and thank you, AIOS, for giving me the opportunity to be here and interact with you. So I'll be talking in brief about basic neurophthal examination and how to start neurophthal examination. So the clinical evaluation in neuroophthalmology starts with a history taking. Then we move on to the ocular examination, which includes visual acuity, confrontation fields, pupil, fundus, systemic examination, and then investigations, typically the ocular and the systemic. So the onset of vision loss is one of the most important hallmark symptoms in neuroophthalmology. How it sets on gives us a clue to the diagnosis. So if the onset of vision loss is hyperacute and acute, probably we are having a vascular or traumatic cause. If it is acute and subacute, probably we are dealing with inflammatory or elevated intraocular pressure. If it is subacute and chronic and progressive, probably we are dealing with a space occupying lesion, chronic or a degenerative disorder of the ophthalmology. The history taking starts with duration of symptoms, whether they are recent or long-standing. Symptoms, whether they are improving or worsening. Associated complaints of headache, vomiting, seizures. Systemic history of focal neurological symptoms and comorbid illnesses. Family history in terms of hereditary neuropathies, autoimmune conditions, and treatment history, that whatever has been given, and previous investigations, because sometimes drugs can also lead to neuroophthalmic disorders. Now, visual acuity is an important baseline parameter. Even if the patient is presented to us after the loss of vision, we can still ask the patient how the vision was at the time of onset of symptoms. Snellen's acuity is good enough for neuroophthalmology, but we should give enough time for patient to respond. Check the best corrected visual acuity and with pinhole, and do not forget to check the near visual acuity, as it can be knocked off in certain neuroophthalmic disorders. Now, visual fields very important in a lot of neuroophthalmic disorders. They are also a good test to make the patient aware of what he's losing and the potential dangers of neuroophthalmic disorders. And we have a full lecture on the visual field, so I'm going to skip that. Pupils, we have to assess the pupillary size, the reaction to light, the near response, dilatation, and testing the afferent pupillary defect. So measurement of pupil can be done with the help of pupillary gauges, which are easily available. We can also use handheld camera or video pupillarimetry. The pupillary size should be assessed in darkness, light, and near, because we want to know what the issue is. The difference between the two pupils of more than 0.4 millimeters is termed as an isochoria. Now, for testing reaction to light, we should have dim surroundings, ask the patient to fixate at a distance. There should not be attempt to close the eyes or look for the near, as people can constrict, and look for the pupillary constriction, speed of constriction and dilatation, pupillary escape, which can be there in optic nerve and retinal disorders, where the pupil constricts and dilates again. Consensual light reflex should also be noted. Check for the near response, that is the accommodation, convergence, and the near triad, and check for the pupillary dilatation, which could be a reflex dilatation with a voice or a loud noise or pain. Dilatation lag of more than 15 seconds can point towards Horner syndrome, or it could be normal. And light near dissociation should also be checked, where the reaction to light is almost always knocked off. Now, RAPD can be checked with the help of Marcus gun or the gun phenomenon, where we cover the normal versus abnormal eye, or it can be tested with a swinging flashlight test, where we shine the light in alternate eyes for 3 to 5 seconds and note the reaction of constriction in the light. The neutral density filters can be quantified with can be helped to quantify the RAPD. And if both eyes are involved, then we can move on to the edge light pupil cycle time, where the small light is shown to the pupillary edge, where it constricts and dilates again because the light is cut off. You count the number of these cycles in 1 minute and then divide it by 60, so that we find out the time required for one cycle, which is, if it is more than 954 milliseconds, that is abnormal, and difference between the two should not be more than 70 milliseconds. Pharmacologic testing can be done with pilocarpine, diluted pilocarpine, cocaine, apaclonidine, hydroxyamphetamine, and phenylephrine, so that we can know whether it is a parasympathetic or a sympathetic blockade, or it is presynaptic or preganglionotic or postganglionic sympathetic defect. Now, this is a case of 12-year-old boy with drooping of eyelids with mild ptosis. We can clearly see there is a right pupil which is smaller than the left pupil, and then he was subjected to MRI because of this. And there was a large paraspinal mass. So this was a case of Horner syndrome, and then patient underwent surgery for benign schwannoma. Another case who presented to us with the difficulty in near vision, we can clearly see that the left pupil is much larger as compared to the right eye. And then the reaction to light, as we see, we shine the light in the right eye, the pupil constricts pretty well. But when we shine the light to the left eye, the eye fails to constrict as good as it was in the right eye. So probably the left eye is abnormal. Then we do the consensual light reflex, where we can again see when the light is shown to the left eye, the right eye constricts well. But again, when the light is shown to the right eye, the left eye doesn't constrict so well. And this is the movement of the pupil. We can see this eye is showing vermiform kind of a pupillary constriction, while the right eye is showing a concentric pupillary constriction. So that clearly we see the left eye is abnormal. And this is at the presentation when we asked to read him for 5 minutes, and then the pupil does constrict. So this was a case of AD's pupil, and then the patient was given asymmetric near-ad with photochromatic glasses. Now, fundus examination is important, should be done after dilatation. Again, we have a full lecture on fundus examination, so I'm going to skip this. Systemic examination must include vitals like BP and pulse, because sometimes you can be dealing with hypertensive retinopathy, CVS, respiratory, abdomen, and CNS, of course, should be done in all these cases. CNS examination should include orientation, gait, attitude, cranial nerve pulses, all from 1 to 12, motor nervous system, at least the power of limbs and DTRs, sensory system, and cerebral system in the form of gait, finger-nose test, and dysdiadochokinesia. Now, investigations can be ocular or it can be systemic. The ocular investigation should be color vision, contrast, fields, and electrophysiologic investigations. Color vision are important because you can have red-green deficiencies in optic nerve disorders, blue-yellow in macular, and optic neuritis can show up as red desaturation. Formal testing can be done with these Chiaras and other forms of color vision test. Contrast sensitivity is a very sensitive test. It drops before the visual acuity is lost, and it may not recover fully. So it can be done formally with the polydopsin or FACT test. Visual fields, again, they are important, and we will have a full lecture on visual fields. Visual evoked responses will be under electrophysiology. I think we again have a full lecture on electrophysiology. OCT can help us to diagnose as well as prognosticate the cases and follow up the cases. Again, we will have full lecture on OCT. Now, systemic investigations have a lot of blood investigations, include hemogram, ESR, CRP, LFT, RAP, autoimmune profile, including the NMO, MOG, and aquaporin 4 antibodies. CSF examination for oligoclonal bands and IgG antibodies should always be required based upon the case-to-case scenario. Montoux is important because TB can mimic anything in India, so Montoux test is important, which can help us find out. Similarly, we have full lecture on the radiologic investigation, so I would not go into detail. So in the end, I would say a methodological examination and a good workup is a must to arrive at a good diagnosis in neuro-ophthalmic cases. Thank you for your kind attention.